Now you may be thinking, because this is so stinking cool and it is just very advanced, that it's going to be super complex and we're going to spend 3 hours showing how to do this. It couldn't be further from the truth. This is one of the simplest things in Qt to do, and it's just ridiculously powerful. So what are we doing? We are going to connect a signal to a slot, and we're going to walk through how to do that. Why? Because we just want to do it. We want to be able to communicate between two objects. And to do this, we're going to use the connect function. We're going to demonstrate some other things as well. So let's jump in here and we're going to make two objects. So I'm going to say class. We want this to be the source. This is going to be a Q object. Make sure both of those are selected, Q object and add Q underscore object. That adds all that beautiful complexity in the background that Mach is going to latch onto and make all this work for us. Next, finish. No, I don't want to automatically add it. And then add new. Let's call this destination. Again, base class should be a Q object or something that inherits Q object. And again, have those things checked. Next, finish. Let's go ahead and add these in. So we just have two very simple Q objects. We haven't done anything at all. These are just very plain, very vanilla, and I'm going to close all these files out just so we can start. We're going to start with source. It's very simply just a class. We've done this before, but you notice we've got this signals thing that we haven't really talked about yet. So what I want to do is I want to add two things. I want to add a test function, and then I want to add a signal. And I'm just going to call it my signal. And just for giggles, we're going to pass a Q string back and forth. Now I need to pause right here and tell you, remember, Q string is not a Q object. That's why we can do this. We're actually making a copy. If you were trying to pass a Q object back and forth through signal slots, you're going to want to use a pointer. We've talked about pointers briefly. So really that's all we need, other than now we have to implement our test function. In here, we need to do a little bit of magic, and this is one thing I don't really care for too much, but it is what it is. We simply have to tell Qt we want to emit this signal. So we'll go in here and we'll say emit. It's just simply a keyword that's added in by Qt, and we need to emit the my signal along with some sort of message. Notice how it's going to automatically try to convert that to Q string for us. That's it. That's just us telling everything that's connected to the signal that we are emitting it. Think of this a lot like shouting into a conference room full of people. You're just going to emit your voice and say, hey, this is happening. And anybody who's caring to listen will now listen to that and do something with it. It's really that simple. Also notice that we don't really implement this. We don't like right click and refactor, and there's not even an option to implement it. It just has to be under signals, and we have to have a definition. That's it. It's really that straightforward and that simple. So let's dive into adding the slot. So we're going to go to our destination. Now you notice one thing that's not there, slots. We have signals, but we don't have slots. We can simply say public slots. And yes, you can have private slots and a whole slew of other things, but we're going to keep it very simple. We're just going to say public slots, which are available to the outside world. And this, we want to add in something very simple. And now usually what I do is I'll actually take the definition of the signal, I'll literally copy it, and I'll go to the destination and just paste it in. That way it's a one-for-one match, and I know exactly what's going to happen. But you can name it anything you want. You could say fuzzy button, little kittens, fireballs, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. I usually just copy and paste the name. That way they line up one for one. I'm going to right click, refactor, and then add a definition. So the slot, we do have to define this. Again, public slots, we have it defined and we have to implement it. Switch over to the header there, or switch from the header to the implementation file. And here we've implemented it. Now let's go ahead and do something with that. So I'm going to include debug. And we're just going to print this out. Very, very simple. Now, what's really the difference between this slot and just a normal function? Absolutely nothing. It is literally just a C++ function. We're just telling Qt that when we compile to add some mock goodness, or the meta object compiler is going to go in and add some logic behind here for us so that we can connect that signal and slot up. And last but not least, let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to jump back to our main, and we simply want to connect those two objects. So let's go ahead and make an instance of each object here. So I'm going to include source, and let's go ahead and include destination. And let's make an instance of each one of those. And let's simply call this O source. And let's make a destination. And let's connect the two up. So I'm going to say QObject. There's a couple different ways of doing this. We're going to cover both of them, but so I'm going to say QObject. So we're calling QObject directly, and we're going to call the static connect. And then we're going to simply get the address of our source object, OSource, and then give it the class name. And we want the signal. Notice how it's got the little, looks like almost like a Wi-Fi signal coming out of it. That's how we know those are signals. Now there's a slight bug here in Qt Creator. It's going to put the parentheses here, and we don't want those because we're not trying to call a function. So we're going to delete those and then comma. And notice how now it wants the receiver. Very, very similar. We want the address of, or a pointer if you're working with pointer. We're going to say the destination. And then I want the class. And we want the slot. Now, if you're ever confused about the name, you can simply look at the icons here, and you notice these little red blocks, these are functions. And these look like little outlets. Those are slots. So delete later is actually a slot. We can just simply scroll down and look for that icon, my signal. There it is, slot. Again, it's going to put that annoying parentheses in there. Get rid of that. That's it. That's really it. So from there, absolutely nothing's going to happen. Let me go ahead and run and demonstrate this. So it's going to build it. Mock is going to come in and say, oh, I see you're using signals and slots. It's going to wrap all that goodness in, but nothing's actually happened because we haven't emitted the signal. This is the basis of, well, event-driven programming. So what we need to do now is take our OSource and call our test function. Because remember, in this guy right here, what's really happening is we are emitting the my signal. So now that we're actually going to emit it, something magical happens. Hello world. What's happening under the hood is the signals being emitted. Qt has an internal thing in the background that's saying, look at all the signals and slots. Does it connect? If it does, because we made a connection, then go ahead and call that slot. However, you can, if you really wanted to, do something like this. ODestination, my signal. Now it's a little bit misleading. I don't like that name. So let's go ahead and flip in here. Let's call this my slot. We're just going to do some surgery here. That way you realize we're not calling a signal. And I'm also showing you how rapid it is. You can actually just change something here. And we can go ahead and say, hi. And we just call it like a normal function here. You don't even need to make a connection because we're not using it. Save, run. Let's see this in action. So the main takeaway here is that you can use a slot or as a normal function. It simply doesn't matter. But if you want that event-driven programming, you need signals and slots. Another major takeaway here is that you don't have to have all signals in one or all slots in another. You can have signals and slots in the same thing. So for example, I could say void, I don't know, about arrived, because we've arrived at our destination. Notice how we have a signal in here. And we could, if we really wanted to, modify it and do whatever we wanted to do, or just leave it at that. It builds just fine. We don't even have to implement it. But you can have signals and slots in the same object. You can even connect signals and slots to the same object or to other objects. That's literally how impressive this is. It's that easy and it's that complex. Now we're going to dive into some of the more deeper end of the ocean here and look at some of the complexities, but I want you to understand fundamentally what we're talking about here is mock. We make a Q object, we have signals, we have slots, and we simply connect the signals to the slots that we want connected.